How's it going, everybody? This is the Stimulus Check Hub here, and today we're going to be talking about a growing concept called universal basic income. And if you'll remember, during the 2020 presidential elections, there was this guy named Andrew Yang, and he ran on this concept of universal basic income, and I'm going to explain why I personally believe the stimulus checks were a deliberate trial run of universal basic income, and there definitely could be more coming soon, depending on who's in charge and who's leading the country, obviously. So let's first talk about what universal basic income is. Universal basic income is basically the idea that every month we give people direct cash instead of doing what we do now, which is where you have all of these different government programs, everything's all broken up. And Andrew Yang's basically making the argument that it's going to be easier just to give people cash versus trying to break everything up into these 50 or 100 different programs. And I think we actually saw with the stimulus checks that it was a lot easier just to give people straight cash. It was a lot more efficient. People liked getting the cash because it's a direct payment versus where a lot of the government programs have a bunch of contingencies and things like that. But the point is, this entire financial system, and this is the thing people really need to understand here, the entire financial system is going to fail. This whole thing is going to fail. And let me explain why. For starters, housing is fundamentally unaffordable. Fundamentally. The structure of how we build our buildings is completely wrong. There's not enough good housing and enough good neighborhoods. So basically, we've created this permanent underclass of people who will never own homes. They will never move up in the world because it's literally impossible with wages where they are. And did you notice how the second wages started going up, the second that people started to make a little bit more money, you're seeing all of these news articles about, oh my God, people are making too much money. There's going to be inflation. Oh my God, things are going to fall apart. Isn't it funny how they have no problem with banks basically ripping people off, charging extra fees for a bunch of stuff, but the second a common person out there starts making a little bit more money, all of a sudden we have a problem. All of a sudden there's going to be huge inflation. Notice they weren't talking about inflation when housing was becoming unaffordable for the average American. There wasn't talks of inflation then because the way they calculate these things is completely disingenuous. They use this thing called the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, but it's really inaccurate. It doesn't account for a bunch of things that we purchase every day. So the overall point I'm trying to make here is that this entire system is fundamentally unstable, and the government knows that it's coming to an end. They know that the system they've built, the way the system was designed, it's not working, it's unraveling, and it's falling apart at the seams. Look at our political discourse in this country. We're totally divided over mostly pointless issues, but a lot of the times there's legitimate issues, but the way we debate about them is, pointless, so we never actually get anywhere. Look at how long it took them to pass the initial stimulus when they shut down the country. We're supposedly the greatest country in the world, but it took us, 6 months, 8 months to get people the first stimulus check? I mean, it was a total disaster. So the point is, the system actually is unraveling now. And all these elevated housing prices that you see, this huge stock market run-up that we've seen, this is all fake. This is all the Fed dropping interest rates. This is all printing money. This is all fraudulent. There is no real recovery. There is no real comeback for most people. Most people never made it out of 2008. Mark my words, most people are never going to recover from this whole COVID situation. That's just the way it is. I'm just telling you straight up. That's the way the system is designed. The system's designed where an increasing few amount of people are going to own everything because that's the way the taxation system works in this country. If you're someone who has a pass-through corporation or you're one of these multi-billion-dollar companies like Apple or Google or whatever, you don't have to report as much tax as the common person out there. You don't, because there's a bunch of loopholes and stuff. I was reading something that was saying the IRS estimates like there's $1 trillion of tax dodging going on or something like that per year. So there's this whole system is going to fail. It is not a matter of opinion. This system is going to fail. You can't have it where the average house out there is $300,000 to $400,000 and the average person is only making $35,000 to $45,000. That system's going to fail. That system's going to fail. It's destined to fail. There's a bunch of people with a ton of debt. There's a bunch of people with a ton of mortgaged houses out there, and the second this economy goes down, they're going to lose their houses just like they did in 2008. It's going to be a lot worse, I think. So this whole system's unraveling. The only way the government can keep the system going is if they continuously issue stimulus checks. That's what I personally believe is going to end up happening. It's either they're going to issue stimulus checks and keep rates at zero and basically just keep dumping money into the system through quantitative easing, or they are going to let the system crash because there's no other way. There's no other way. Because these housing values aren't going to go down, guys, without higher interest rates, because look what they did. What they did is they artificially lowered interest rates. That caused a bunch of people to be able to borrow money at very cheap rates. If you go to buy a car right now, you can get 0% down, basically, which isn't a good thing. I mean, try not to have any debt. But the point is, those artificially low interest rates that are in this economy and the fact that everybody has debt, everyone you talk to has a ton of debt, no one pays for anything anymore. So this entire thing is built on a house of cards. You know, this entire thing is going to crumble under the pressure when we actually enter a legitimate recession, a longer-term recession, which is going to happen. We haven't had one in 15 years, but it is going to end. And when it does end, mark my words, a bunch of people are going to be hurt and they're never going to recover from it. It's going to be just like '08, except it's going to be worse. But the only way the government can avoid that, and this is what Andrew Yang knows and what I'm, figuring out as well, is to have a stimulus check in the form of a UBI, a universal basic income, because there's really no other way. How are they going to keep the system going when you have a bunch of jobs about to be automated out of existence? How are you going to keep the system going when housing prices are 10, 15, 20, 30 times income? You're going to have 100-year mortgages? I mean, that's, maybe you can kick the can a little more down the road that way, but this whole system's going to blow up. This whole system's coming to an end. We've reached the maximum amount of debt that individuals can handle. We've reached the maximum amount of debt that the government can handle and corporations. This whole thing's going to end. So now we're just waiting for, all right, is the government going to keep doing unlimited stimulus? There is talks of a forced stimulus check. There's talks of continuous stimulus checks in the form of UBI, which is what ultimately I believe is going to happen in the end. When the system finally is changed, that's what I believe is going to happen. It's going to be everyone's going to get a UBI. We're going to get rid of all these inefficient social programs and just go to a UBI because it's more efficient. And people have more control over their money. But this whole system's going to end. That's the important lesson of this video, is this system is going to end. There's too much debt in the system. They can never raise interest rates. They're never going to raise interest rates. In the second they do raise interest rates, the whole system's going to topple down. It's going to crumble. The stock market's going to crash. The real estate market's going to crash. And then finally, people will be able to buy houses. I mean, I know some people who are looking into buying houses right now. It's crazy. I mean, the price to redo your deck right now, or the price to buy some wood, is like 6 times what it was a year ago. I mean, that's how crazy it is. So this whole thing's going to end. And I think it's going to end relatively soon. I mean, within 5 years. I can't imagine them able to push this off more than 5 years. But even if it doesn't, even if they push it off 10 years, it's still going to end. That's the important thing. It's going to end. It's just a matter of when the government wants to end it and when they end it in a controlled manner to where the least people get hurt as possible. I'm assuming that's their goal. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below.